when you get abused, sometimes it leads for you to become somebody who helps others, who don't want to see everybody experience what you experience. So they become these super helpers. They go into these fields. They have these hearts for these people that are struggling with abuse. And then you get people like R. Kelly, who once they were abused, now they became the abuser. So they're no longer the victim. You don't see them in the eyes of the victim no more. They've now become the person who were victimized than others. And I think that's what happens. Like, you start to bleed on people that didn't cut you when you don't get help. I know you play sports, and I play sports as well. So when I hear this, my mind immediately goes back to that. And when you play sports, you're actually taught to compare yourself to each other.
Oh, yeah,
You compare
definitely.
yourself to the people that play your position. You compare yourself to, like, everybody. It's like a comparison game. And you want to be better than other people. And when you get stuck in that track of trying to be better than other people, when you don't reach that goal, you just start to think less of yourself. I think it's so performance-based when you hear that term, comparison is the thief of joy, because really, I tell students it's the person that you need to compare yourself to the most is the person you used to be compared to who you are now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's deep.
That's good. That's good. That's a good one.
You can write that one down.
I never heard that before.
What?
Like, comparing yourself to, like, your past, like, self instead of other people.
Yeah.
Because, growing up, you always compare yourself to other people.
You always do.
Like, yeah, like you said, sports, TV shows,
Yeah.
even, like, family members,
Yeah. I think you have to look back and think about who you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Even like me being a parent now, I tell people, like, my first year of parenting, I was trash. Like, I wasn't a good parent because I was so selfish, right? I was just so focused on Jarvis and what Jarvis got going on. But when you're able to see, like, hey, it's bigger than just me, I think that makes you a good parent. But now I can look back at who I was and be like, man, I grew. And when you do that, when you compare yourself to somebody you used to be, it kind of makes you feel like, a little bit
Good.
more joy.
Yeah, good,
Yeah. But when you compare yourself to somebody else, I think that brings you down. But I seen it opposite, where some people compare themselves. Like, you never seen that person that be telling you about their football career, basketball career.
What? They don't give that.
Yeah, they showing you pictures from 5, 10 years ago. Like, bro, you should have seen me back then. It's like, man, grow up. But I think definitely, it's more peace in comparing yourself to the person you were to who you are now. It shows spiritual maturity. I know you touched on it a little bit, and you said you were a social worker. I want you to kind of give a little bit of detail of what your position kind of holds and, what you actually do.
Okay, so yeah, I am a social worker for the Broward County School District, but specifically we do crisis work. So I work for the MHeart team. So we're the team that goes out to schools when there's a parent or a student death. We're the team that goes out, helps the kids talk through their emotions. It's more of like grief work, but also like the shock factor of, finding out there was their classmate or their teacher who just passed away. So we're the team that goes out. And then we do other things, but that's like our main role. So when we're not doing those things, we do this thing called Terrace Metrics. So it's like an assessment that we go to each school. Each student is able to answer questions about how they've been feeling within the past month. And that kind of like is really good because it arises like different kids who don't talk to somebody. That test can like, if they do come up as a priority one, we're able to talk to them and get them some services as well. So those are just a few things, but
That's good. I like everything that you said, but that grief counseling aspect is so real. Where it's like it made me think when I was in 9th grade until 12th grade, we had a teacher. He was my first period teacher, and he was like he used to always like have sayings. He was a cool teacher, but he was real strict. Like, he was a math teacher, but you had to break down your problem. Like, you had to show everything, how you got to that answer. And he just always say introduction, body, and conclusion.
you always remember your first period teacher.
I always remember your first period teacher. But I remember one day we was in his class and they announced over the announcements, like, we was joking, like, man, we got a sub, finally, this fool not here. Like, we was happy. And then over the announcement, it was like, hey, we want to announce that Mr. A passed last night. And it just shook everybody because it was like, dang, like, all the good jokes that we had, we just gonna have to hold on to him for life because he gone. But that stuff, and then there wasn't anybody to talk to, so we just went through our day like on some like he gone. So
See, and I don't know how I feel about them like announcing it on the announcements. Like I don't think that's the best way
responsible.
to,
Yeah, I don't think
you
so either.
know, tell like the school that, especially because it is a death and it's like it's intimate, right? So maybe they should have came into the classroom and then, obviously, but that's why we're here, that's why our team is here now. So our team actually was created after the Stoneman Douglas shooting. That's how our team arose and became a team. But
Yeah.
so after, you found out about that, did you talk to like another teacher
Yeah. Nah.
or like a staff?
Nah, I don't remember anybody. I don't remember it. Maybe it could have been offered, but I don't remember it. So kind of like a thing of like, dang, he gone, and you go through your day, and you don't remember till years later. Like, man, that dude passed, and we just like went through life, and it's crazy where it's the real fact is that we're all going to grieve, and we all will be grieved. But on the opposite end, it's like it should be support, especially for students, because the way they grieve is differently. Us both working with kids, we see some kids grieving in bad behavior, or we see some kids just disassociating, when it's like they need that safe space, they need somebody to talk to.
Definitely.
And sometimes the school don't provide that. And when you look outside to get it, sometimes they go to their peers. And if you go to your peers, you ain't gonna get good counseling at all. You ain't gonna get good counseling at all. The terrace measure thing I thought was dope too, because I think that does provide a safe space, and a lot of kids are definitely looking for that. Like, they may not say it or they may not even know it, but as soon as you have a conversation with them, the vulnerability that these kids have shows that, man, I was just looking for somebody to hear me out. So,
We don't know I don't know the exact numbers, but like a lot of priority ones that come about when we do these service metrics is that we're able to connect them with the social worker. And like you said, a lot of these kids they don't talk about, things that they have going on at their home or in school. A lot of it is in school too, like bullying and stuff like that. So the way that the assessment is designed, there's specific questions that come up that that would prioritize a priority one to like connect with them and check in because we don't check in with all of them. It's only like the top ones. So yeah, we were able to connect a lot of students with their school social worker at their specific school.
that's good. That's good, man. And I think social workers also got like a bad name. Growing up
Oh
in
yeah.
black communities, we hear social worker, we think, damn, they taking your kids out the house, boy. You done did something wrong. So when you hear social workers, it's a fear. But I think learning what social work actually does, and learning like the benefits and how they support our students.
Yeah.
I think that's gave me like a lot of like clarity and be able to like, hey man, now let me refer you to the social worker, and they definitely do help. So
But same situation with me, like in high school. I was the same way, like, social worker, you're gonna take me from my parents, you're gonna get my parents in trouble. But then I actually had a social worker in high school, and she was so cool, like, she was, like it felt like a real person, right? And she shifted my whole mindset on what social work is and, what they're supposed to do or you know what I mean? So yeah, definitely, like, educating the students as well, like, that's not our only role or, that can happen in specific situations, but that's not the overall, job of a social worker, like, we can help you in other ways.
so now that we talked about your position a little bit, let's kind of go back. Uh, what in your life, like what experiences, what things led you to this field, and how did these things equip you? Like what things in your life led you to get into the mental health field?
So there's a few things, but if we wanna go back further, I actually like I touched on it a little bit. I did have social workers throughout my life, and the first initial social worker I had wasn't a good experience, right? So I had that experience of like, being taken from my parents, and them just being very, like, not caring, very just surface level, like, "This is what we need to do." Um, So I started learning like the system early on, like how these people work and stuff. And then in high school when I was reunited with another social worker, um, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, we would have a lot of conversations. She would come visit me in high school like once a month, and she would tell me how she's been going on all these trips and like stuff like that, and she's helping people, and I was like, wow, like that's something that I would want to do because I've been through so much. So I feel like I could relate to kids, like, or I could relate to these people, and
Mhm.
it's like a different lens, right? So if somebody who doesn't go through certain things, they might be equipped for the job, of course, but someone who's gone through the same things as someone else can have a different lens, and it can help somebody a little bit more or in a different way. So that's kind of what promoted me. And then also, I do have a very close family member that struggles with mental health. And I've seen it firsthand, through psychosis, being Baker acted, going through all that. Um, and it just like it softened my heart a little bit for other people who go through that. And it made me just want to like help them. So
It's good.
yeah, it's
It's
kind of
good.
how.
Thank you for your transparency. We're gonna go deeper though. I know you touched on it a little bit about foster care. What was the situation that led to you being in there? And, if you can give us some details, if you're comfortable with, you give us the details you're comfortable with, and we could dive into that story a little bit.
So when I was about 4 years old, my mother met a woman at the gym. My mom was like, she was very into fitness, so she was always at the gym. So the daycare lady at the gym actually told her, like, if you ever need somebody to watch your kid outside of, the gym, I have a daycare running at my crib. They became really cool friends. So that's what it was. I used to go to her house like on Mondays and Fridays. And she had two older sons. Um, so, eventually I was spending a lot more time in there, and the kids were not so nice. So they would like push me, hurt me. It came to a point where they were leaving bruises. So one night my mom was giving me a bath, and she seen like a whole bunch of bruises on me, and she was like, I'm only 4 at this point. I don't really speak up. She's
Yeah.
asking me
And you
like,
don't even remember any of
oh, I
this.
remember.
Oh,
I don't remember the specifics, but
yeah.
I remember like having the bruises. I remember going to the hospital.
Mm,
Um, so she had brought me to the hospital because she was freaking out. And crazy story is I was in the hospital 2 days before that because I was jumping on the bed with my brother and I busted my lip. So now, woman coming in, she's bringing her kid. 2 days later, more bruises. They're calling the social worker right away. They're suspecting um, child abuse. Um, so they had the social work come down. They take my mom to the station, and my mom's calling my father. And at the time they were together. Um, and my father, he wasn't really like aware of all his rights, right? So when he came in, his first initial thing was leave my wife alone. I did it, right? So he had already incriminated himself. Um,
mm,
so they took him, they arrested him, and they had that on record of
yeah,
him
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 admitting
basically
to it,
admitting to just because he wanted my mom to be
not be
released.
in trouble. Yeah.
Um, so that was a whole year of them trying to the social workers actually like trying to get us to tell on our parents, and like having my brother, he was 2 years older than me. He remembers a lot more than I do. They would sit him in a room and try to convince him that my parents were the one that abused me, right? So they had evidence, I guess, from like prior stuff between my parents. So they ended up taking us to foster care, and they claimed it as child abuse. So then I spent some time in the foster care system, and then eventually my older sister, was able to take me and my brother until my mom and dad were able to situate,
Yeah.
go through classes. They make them do a lot of stuff, but
Yeah. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah. As they should, if it was abuse. Yeah. When you think about how long was that time period, the time period of foster care and then the time period of living with sister until you got back to living with mom and dad.
probably about 2.5, 3 years.
And do you remember that time? Do you remember like the foster care and
I don't remember the foster care at all. Like, I don't. I don't remember. My brother, he'll tell me stories. He'll be like, they used to make us eat grits, and like we never liked the grits. I like grits now though, but he would tell me these
They were
stories.
black or white?
They were black.
Ah, see, I can tell. You got a little sprinkle.
Yeah. But he would tell me these stories, and like I generally don't remember, but I do remember like getting out, like the day my sister picked us up, and like we were so happy, like we're finally like going home.
Yeah, but it wasn't like you were miserable there type thing.
Don't remember.
Really?
Yeah.
What about his experience? Did your brother talk about his experience?
They were like bullies and stuff, but
so it wasn't just you guys in the house.
no, it was like a home. It was like a home with a bunch of foster kids, yeah. And like even when we like got back with our sister, we weren't able to like talk to my dad and my mom. Like we weren't able to talk to them. Like it had to be like visitations, right? So like whenever we would see my mom or my dad, a social worker had to be there, or like the phone calls were monitored.
So, when you did like finally get out the foster care, what was your relationship like with your parents, if you can remember?
Okay, so after we got
Yeah.
so by that time my parents had already got a divorce. They already split. So my mom came in and we started living with my mom, and um it was good. Like I just remember missing my dad a lot because he wasn't around. And then, I was so used to my sister as well. So like then my sister left, like she moved back to New Jersey. She uprooted her whole life to come get me and my brother. She was in college at the time. She dropped out of school. Like, so she ended up leaving. But just that dynamic, it was different. But I was happy to be back with my mom. But my dad, he just, like I started to see like, all right, this is like who my dad is now. Like he's not gonna be around as he should.
Kind of disassociated for a little while. Two things. Do you feel like the situation with you and your brother being in foster care led to them getting a divorce, or did you already see signs of like, hey, they're on the brinks?
Oh, they was already having problems before.
Really?
Definitely. They like my grandma told me like my mom was already planning on like leaving my dad before that happened.
Yeah.
And then when it did happen, the court, they weren't even allowed to see each other either. Even though that they were married, they weren't allowed to be in the same area.
Yeah. What about grandma? Could grandma have taken you in at the time, or it just wasn't still?
So she lived in Connecticut. So obviously she offered, but it wasn't ideal to uproot us to another state. And I don't think they would allow that. But my grandma, when I tell you she has a box of papers, like she was writing to the governor. Like there's like, I'm talking like 20 letters to the governor of like trying to like instill like my she's not my real grandma, so it would be my mom's aunt. So my niece didn't do this, like giving all the evidence and stuff like that. I actually have that paperwork because she wants to write a book about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Family member I want to touch on next, is because you weren't alone in this situation. There was somebody with you. And I want to hear more about his experience from your perspective. Of course, he's not here. But from your brother's experience, what were some challenges that you've seen? Or how did the foster care affect him being a little bit older going through it?
I feel like my brother, it definitely affected him more than it affected me because, he remembers all these things. So, yeah, like when we talk, well, we don't really ever talk about it, but when we do talk about it, like I said, he'll say certain stuff and I'm like, I don't remember that. But he will point out like how like they used to like brainwash him basically like into saying lies about his parents. And then he would get on the stand and say those things, right? So you can only imagine what that could do to a 7-year-old's head. Like,
yeah, and he could start to blame himself and stuff like that.
So, I know I touched on before, I said a family member who struggles with mental health, but that family member is my brother. And he has a lot of mental health issues, and I believe that like a lot of it has to do with everything that happened growing up.
Yeah. With you being in that field, how do you support him?
So that's a tricky question, right? Because, I used to bend backwards for him. Like, I would do anything for him. You know, I'd get on the phone with the doctors. I'd talk to the psychiatrist. I'd try to get the therapy in, give him rides to therapy. But I will say one thing is, if you could, what is the saying where you could like lead the horse to the water, but you can't make the
Horse
horse
gotta
drink?
train that jump.
Right. So if I started to feel like there became a point where I'm working harder than him. Right. So, and you know, mental health is tricky. Like, you sometimes people won't even accept it for themselves, right? To this day, I don't think he accepts like his diagnosis, right? And you know, that sometimes that takes longer for someone to really accept it. But if he's gotten like Baker acted multiple times, you know, there's been like times where he's had like opportunities to get therapy and stuff like that. But he kind of just doesn't want to. So I've helped him in that way, and like, you know, had multiple conversations and any like resources, anything like that, like trying to help him with that. But it's hard when somebody else doesn't want to do it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And that's the reality where it's like you can't want anything more than that person wants for themselves. You know what I'm saying? So like you can desire for them to be better, just like all of our parents desire for us to like be the best, but like it's a responsibility that we have to ourselves, that we have to desire to get better. You know, and it's tough because if you love somebody, of course, you feel like, I want to do da-da-da-da-da, I'm going to do it with you, but not until they take that step, you can't really want it for themselves. I think that's why the intervention, like when they be catching these cats on drugs and everybody come, that's why it seldom is effective, because I think people don't actually desire it for themselves yet. Until they really got to their breaking point,
Right.
and it's like, I really need help, you really just throwing darts at a blank canvas.
And
That's good. Throwing darts at a big canvas. I'm writing that down too.
No, that's good. No, that's yeah, I definitely agree with the part of like sometimes it just takes longer for someone to get to that breaking point, right? And I feel like at this point he might have not have gotten to that point. And that's just for him to figure out. But it took me a long time to get to this place of I'm not gonna uproot my whole life to help him, right? Because I've been doing that for years, and you know, it would leave me drained, it leave me like upset, leave me sad because this is my brother, right? We, like you said, we were raised up together. We went through everything together, right? But I went this way and he kind of went that way, and a lot of times I don't blame him because you know mental health is it's not always your fault, but it's how you deal with it, right? And that's what I think is most important, is how you deal with it.
Yeah, it's definitely how you respond to it. It makes me think of something completely off basis. I'm gonna bring it up though. It makes me think of the R. Kelly like situation. I know we've had this R. Kelly conversation, but R. Kelly, you know, if people don't know, his brother came out and said that they used to get sexually abused by an older sister.
Wow.
And when you get abused, sometimes it leads for you to become somebody who helps others, who don't want to see everybody experience what you experience. So they become these super helpers. They go into these fields. They have these hearts for these people that are struggling with abuse. And then you get people like R. Kelly, who once they were abused, now they became the abuser. So they're no longer the victim. You don't see them in the eyes of the victim no more. They've now become the person who are victimized than others. And I think that's what happens. Like, you start to bleed on people that didn't cut you when you don't get help. And I think that's like really like our responsibility to get help, so we make sure we don't bleed on people that didn't cut us.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, if I'm being transparent, I know I've done it. You know what I'm saying? In my lifetime, I know I've definitely, you know, had displacement or did things out of trauma or out of like, you know, insecurities, and it's hurt other people's because I didn't want to deal with my own personal issue.
But I think the most important thing with that is awareness. So if you're able to be aware of that and take accountability, then okay, right? But some people, they never get to that point where they're aware or take accountability. And that's kind of where it's like, all right, you start to become the abuser, like, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And it's, a Bible verse that says, if the people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. I think humility is something that God desires for us so heavily. Like, God desires for us to be humble, you know, but we don't have that self-awareness to see that, hey, I have a need for God. I'm broken. This area of my life needs to be fixed. I need repentance. I need healing. Since we don't see that, we just operate out of whatever brokenness we got. And then we try to fix it ourselves. And it's a lack of humility, and when you lack that humility, you do back to, you hurt other people. You know what I'm saying? You Diddy, you R. Kelly, you Bill Clinton, Bill Cosby, whoever we deem to be like the worst of the worst in society today, you become that person. It's not just you wake up and be that person. You become that person because you never dealt with whatever issue you got. You never dealt with the pornography. You know what I'm saying? You never dealt with the drug addiction. You never dealt with the insecurities. You never dealt with, you know what I'm saying?
Or maybe you tried to, but you didn't do it through God. You didn't lean on God. You try to do it yourself.
Try to do it yourself.
And that's not gonna work, right?
But it's tough to trust God because it's like I can see Olivia's limits. I can see Jarvis's limits. I don't see God's limits.
Right.
I don't even know what God is doing sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So to say I put my trust in somebody I physically can't see, one, and that I physically can't hear sometimes. Some people say they can. Some people just feel it in their spirit. But it's just like, since I can't physically see and touch and hear exactly, it's hard for me to really grasp what God is trying to tell me how to do. So, then I go back to leaning on myself and I run into this wall again. So it's like when we really say, man, I'm giving it all to God and, I'm depending on him. I'm leaning on him wherever his spirit guides me. I think that's when we actually receive the healing that we need.
It brings you like a peace.
Yeah.
Almost.
And it's a process. I don't wake up and be I'm good now.
Nothing good happens overnight. Everything is a process. Definitely.
Yeah, everything's a process. Now we're going to get to a little tougher part. Let's talk about mom a little bit. Tell us about your mom.
So my mom, beautiful soul, very outgoing, very funny. A lot of people say me and her were just alike. It's probably why we used to bump heads a lot. But she had a very deep story, right? Had my sister at 15. Actually on her 16th birthday, I had my sister. So she had to grow up really fast. She came from, her mom passed away when she was 4. Her dad was an alcoholic. So she never really had that two-parent household. And then she had my sister young, so she had to grow up fast. She ended up packing her stuff after my sister turned 18, moving to Florida by herself, packed her car, moved to Florida, then met my dad. Then had me. And then when she got married to my dad, that's actually when she got saved. So she didn't get saved till she was around, I want to say 38, when she was pregnant with me. So I only knew Christian mom. I didn't know mom before, right? My sister knew both moms. So I could see growing up that dynamic between my mom and my sister. There was always this weird elephant in the room kind of thing. But that was probably just their relationship. They just never probably healed from. But mom was always in the church, grew up going to church Sunday, Wednesdays, Bible camp, Bible studies in the household, always talking about God. Only played 88.1 in the car. That was the only channel. Do you know 88.1?
I'm not saved like she saved. I listen.
Everybody knows 88.1.
I listen to 99 Jams and Ja Rule in the car. I'm sorry.
But only 88.1 in the car, Christian radio. Yeah. So then around 3rd grade is when so my brother had pneumonia, and my mom was also the type of person, after everything that happened with me, she never took us to the hospital after that. So,
she didn't trust hospital.
We come in, we got scrapes on our, she's taking care of it. She's not taking us to the hospital. So when my brother got really sick, she was like, all right, I gotta take him to the hospital. So she was having some pain in her breast at that time. So when she brought him to the hospital, she was like, well, let me get checked. I'm already here. Not even an hour later, they're telling her she has stage 4 cancer, breast cancer. So if you know anything about stage 4, it had already spread to her bones. So they were able to, cure the breast cancer, but it would still remain in her bones. It's terminal, basically. Um, so that was a shock because, she didn't think that would ever happen, right? So when I was touched a little bit about my grandma wanting to write a book, there's a few different reasons why people get cancer, right? It could be, but a big one is stress, right? So my grandma's theory is, all the stress of that kind of might have played a role into her breast cancer because cancer doesn't run in my family. She was
Her mental health starts to affect her physical health.
Mhm. And no one in my family has ever had cancer. So this was like a shock, right? Um, so yeah, she ended up getting the diagnosis. But she survived. She survived way longer than she was supposed. She survived 7 years after that. So she didn't end up passing away till I was in 9th grade. Um, and then that's when my life changed. Definitely changed.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on, two things before we continue to dive into your story. Something light. What's crazy, I have older sister and I have younger sister and I have another sister close in age with me. And we all have different views of our parents. And it's crazy how we can have the same parents, but based off of the time that they had us and even our sex. For me, I'm the only boy, so we all have different experiences where to my sisters, they think my parents are super strict. I wish my parents were a little bit more strict. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's different aspects and different people that we got. Like my older sister got really immature parents. I got mature parents, but still just like trying to figure it out. My little sister got parents that were kind of like done with it, raising kids. I'm gonna be honest with you. So it's all like these different aspects of what type of parent they got, even though we got the same parent. So did you and your sister, did y'all deal with that dynamic
Oh,
as far
yeah.
as like that?
Yeah, and my sister, she wasn't the type to say stuff out of spite or she never really talked about the past. But there would be certain things where she'd be like, yeah, mommy wasn't like that with me. And for example, my mom did have her when she was 16. So they was both kids, being raised together almost. So my mom was very strict when it came to curfew, boys, the music I listened to, very, very strict. And yeah, my sister would be telling me yeah, that's not how she was with me. I remember this specific example. I don't know if you know the Peacock song by Katy Perry. But if you get the gist, anyways, it was playing in the background. My mom was so mad. She's told my sister turn it off. Mind you, my she's 24 years older than I am.
Oh,
So
she's
already an adult,
Yeah.
and she's just it's not that big of a deal, mom. It's just a song, and it was certain stuff like that, very strict on, stuff like that. Yeah, so definitely a different dynamic when it came to that.
Yeah, and it's dope to see growth. It's dope to see growth, but I think it also can build resentment because it's I know my older sister. I know she got a little resentment on how I was treated versus how she was treated. And now, I can understand it. At first, it was just what's wrong with you? But now I can understand it a little bit more. Another dynamic I wanted to touch on is how your life, kind of mirrored your mom's life. You brought it up earlier when you said my grandma, and then you clarified that it was your great aunt.
Yeah.
And then you later on said that your grandma passed when your mom was young, so she was raised by that aunt then.
Yes and no. Yes and no. So my mom stayed with her sometime, and then there was always moving around the aunt's house, uncle house. Yeah. So, but that aunt and my mom were only 16 years apart. So she was the younger sister out of the sisters.
Oh, okay.
My mom's mom was the older sister.
How did grandma pass, if you know?
It was actually from a failed abortion, and it was an infection. And we're talking back in 1995.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or no, not 1985.
1985?
1965. I'm sorry.
Oh, 1965.
Yeah. So, something.
Yeah. That's that's really deep rooted
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So And it's crazy, like when I said how your lives kind of reflect each other, you said people remind, like even though y'all weren't, like y'all were bash head that time, people say y'all were alike. And then also in other ways, you lost your mom at a young age, similar to her, not as young. Like she probably doesn't have as much experiences with her mom, but you lost your mom at a young age as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, man, how lives
It
reflect each
is.
other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
After your mom's passing, right? What way did you respond that was like, you know, because I know you touched on it a little bit, my life changed. How was your personal response? What happened with y'all as well? Like, you know, did y'all move? Who did y'all
Mm.
live with? Like, what was the whole dynamic of like this situation?
So after she passed, my dad, he stepped up. He was like, all right, like I got, it's time for me to lock in.
Yeah.
So he moved into the crib that we were living in, you know, started being dad, right? After all these years of him just being in and out, like I would see my dad, right? But it wouldn't be consistent. And a lot of times when he would come in my childhood, it would just be chaos. Like he coming late at night drunk, like just causing havoc, causing chaos. There would be good times, like we'll go to the beach and stuff. But that wasn't consistent. So when he did move in, um, I didn't know this, but I had a lot of resentment towards him. So it's now this new change of I just lost my mom, but now I'm trying to build this relationship with this person who's already kind of, hurt me in the past, right? So I was acting out, like I wasn't, I didn't feel like or presented myself to be the same person. We stopped going to church. It wasn't consistent. Dabbled into a few different things. Um, yeah, but one thing I will say is I never blame God. I never blame God for taking my mom. I always kind of thanked him for keeping me strong in those moments because there were moments where I'm like, dang, like I'm gonna be okay. Like, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah. Did you pray for healing when she was going through it?
Oh, like yeah,
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. And seeing her not get healed from it, what was the feeling towards that? Or was it just an understanding of, hey, sometimes, you know?
There was whys, like why, like, and it was more of like she didn't deserve that, right? She was such a good person. Like everybody at the church knew her. Like she's always, like I mentioned, like the loud person, like always, giving, giving, giving. Like she was a hairdresser. Like we would always volunteer, like for like the kids in need, like back to school. Like she was the one doing all the haircuts. Like she was just like that person in the church. So there was a lot of people praying for her. And when they heard the news, I knew about it. We was all kind of shocked because like we all thought like she was gonna be like healed. Um, but yeah, there were like those whys, but kind of just like sitting with it and just like, okay, like, she's not in pain anymore. Like, she did her work on this earth.
So
Like,
y'all watched the suffering and y'all knew
oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Who were y'all staying with in that time?
Her.
So y'all was still, wow.
And my aunt came for like probably like the last 2 months when she started getting really sick, but we was still in the house with my mom. We was seeing it all just go down. Like, yeah.
I know you said you dabbled into some different things and, you know, stuff like that when dealing with the grieving process and not knowing how to grieve properly. Uh, when did you come up out of that? How did you refocus? What was like the thing that took you and was like, okay, this is freedom from this?
I don't know. Like, I think just like eventually getting to that point of realizing like this is not helping me. It's just making it worse, right? And like just having that like, it's one thing to have like grief and stuff, but then once you start feeling that guilt and shame, you're tapping into a whole different level of like feelings. Like, you know what I mean? Like grief is one thing, but now like shame and guilt, that's on you, right? So getting to that point of like, I don't want to feel like this anymore and this is not helping me. Um, and then just like remembering like where I came from, like remembering like everything that my mom instilled in me and like taught me growing up and like everything that she like warned me about and stuff that I was already doing, but just realizing like this is not gonna help me. anymore.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, man. You making me. I'm about to do a shameless plug real quick because you made me think of this. But I'm actually writing a book. It'll be dropping soon, but it's an allegory, but on the prodigal son. And yeah, I think we go off into these rambles and we do things outside of the character or even outside of the person that our parents raised us to be, and we go completely left.
Yeah.
And then when we get back, it is like this shame, just like the prodigal son wrestled with I'm going to go back home, but I'm going to go back home as a servant. I ain't going back home as a son. Like, I'm going to see if my dad will let me be one of his slaves because at least they got food. And it's like, nah, when his dad seen him, he was like, nah, you're my son. And I think sometimes shame tells you you're not a son no more.
Mhm.
And that's the enemy. Like, oh, you're not a son no more. Whatever you did is beyond forgivable. You diddy. Like, I'm saying, I keep on breaking them up. But you did something that's so left field that you can't come back. And that's what shame tries to remind you of. And it's not till you push against that and you're able to see yourself as God's daughter, God's son, where you can really like dive into that, okay, what does repentance look like? But I'm not that person who I once was. That person is dead. That person is gone. Comparing myself to who I once was to who I am now. So, yeah, I'm happy that you was able to come to that place. And then, the foster care, there was some benefits that actually came from that. If you can explain that a little bit.
So, flash forward to college, and college, probably like my second or third year is kind of when I started to have those realizations of like, I don't want to like, live in this lifestyle or life anymore. But coming to that is, so I went on to college with a homeless waiver because in my senior year, well, 11th grade year, living with my dad ended up not working. We getting evicted. Then we're getting evicted again. So I had to move with a family friend for like my last senior year. And then after that, they were kind of like, all right, senior year, like you gotta go. Like, what's your plan? So I was homeless at that point in time, like between the finding a place to live. So I was able to get a homeless waiver for college, and they pay for all your school, right? So as I'm in college and I'm a lot, free of charge, I'm like, this is crazy. Like I'm starting to want to go do my master's. And I'm talking to my advisor about it, and she was like, well, the homeless waiver doesn't cover your master's. It only does your bachelor's. And then around this time, our governor, he had passed like a statute stating like no matter how old you were as long as you were in the DCF, if you have like a DCF case, you'll be able to have free schooling till you're 26, and that's master's, that's doctorate, that's bachelor's, all of the above. She was telling me about this, and I was like, I actually was in the foster care. Like, can you check for me? So the guy checked for me, and I was able to go to school for free, another master's, and that kind of relates me back to the thing with my brother, right? So he wasn't in school at the time, and he's seeing like, I'm getting housing, I'm getting food, I'm getting all these things, and I'm telling him like, you could, you could do this too, like, you know what I mean? Like, come on, like, let's do this. So I get him the waiver. He goes to school, and it's just like, you stop applying himself, stop doing the work, and now it's like you just threw this opportunity away, right? So, he's still working on it, but that's just an example of like the horse thing again. Like, I could give you the tools, but are you gonna take it? But yeah, that's a really good thing to know if you have ever been in the DCF. If you ever been in foster care, that is something that I try to promote as well as a school social worker. If I hear anybody, even like I have younger cousins also. This is something that not a lot of people know about, so they would never know. But the fact that I have that knowledge, I like to share it.
No, that's definitely good to know because the foster home system, like, I know it gets a bad reputation, but I think it is helpful for
Oh
some.
yeah.
It is helpful for some. And then the fact that, however you feel about Governor DeSantis or any politician is your business. But the fact that he was able to have something to
Yeah.
support people, especially kids in need of that need was
And
really
they
great.
support you in college too. Like they have like pantries, like for food. They have like feminine hygiene, or for males as well. Like, and then they do like check-ins every month. Like, it's not just here's the money. Like,
And they
they
back
actually
off.
check in. You know what I mean? So
That's good, man. Working for the school board for as long as I have, I've definitely seen a lot of foster kids, and a lot of them just are low. I think that they're dealing with a lot mentally. Some of them came from really rough households where it may have been drug use, could have been abuse, or it could have been just neglect. It could have been anything that led them to being there. Their parents could have passed. So a lot of these kids have already dealt with a lot of trauma. So if you can make life easier just by
oh
giving them
yeah,
education, that's great, man. So
definitely. And just being in that program, I did meet like a lot of other like kids who were in the foster care like longer than I was. You know what I mean? And I seen how like beneficial like this program was.
that's good.
Um, yeah.
I want to dive into a little bit with your personal relationship with God. I know you said you grew up in the church, like a lot of us did, but I think even up in the church is not synonymous with having a relationship with God. When did your relationship with God begin for yourself, outside of my relationship with my God of my mama? You know what I'm saying? How my personal relationship with God, when did that develop?
I think like probably after my mom passed, like, more of like the prayer and like trusting in him and like, but that was still like a little bit of like the immaturity as well. So I would say in college, I went through like a really, really like deep, like dark depression. Like, I'm talking intrusive thoughts all day long for months. Like, I really was just like in a very bad place. And my cousin that I was living with at the time, she was invited to a Bible study on campus. And I was like, nah, I don't really, I've seen them on Instagram. I'm not really feeling them. And she was like, just come. So like, and this kind of sounds like a cliche like story. I feel like a lot of people say this, but I ended up going, and I gave it a chance. And I fell off a little bit, but then I came back and I was like, wow, like I really need to like lock in. Like, this is actually like helping me feel better. Like, it's giving me some type of hope, because in that deep dark there was nothing there. Like, there was nothing there. So being consistent with the Bible studies, and then like, breaking it down, because a lot of time it's like understanding the Bible too. Like, I've always had difficulty like actually understanding like the verbiage of it, and like so the way that their Bible studies were designed is like they would like break stuff down, certain categories and stuff like that. And then I started going to church, and that's kind of when my personal journey with him started, and like understanding like it for myself. And then me like going to church by myself, not having my mom take us, or you know what I mean, that. So I would say that probably in college. So like 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah, and to be real, it's a never ending journey, one.
Oh
But
yeah.
I don't think the Bible, when it talks about raising your kids like in a way and they'll return to it, like it's dope when they say that. But I think a lot of times as parents, we don't know how to raise our kid, and show them God in a way where they'll choose God. Because it's one thing for me to bring them to church, but then are my actions displaying
Oh,
that?
that is so important.
Yeah, because
Wow.
if I'm like just putting on, and I go to church and then when I go home, I'm a whole different person, what it's going to teach the kid is performance. And it's going to show them how to do church, not how to have a relationship with God. And they're going to view Christianity as hypocrisy. So we have to reflect God even in our households, not just throwing them in the church. I think it's just deeper than saying, hey, I went to church when I was a kid. It's like, now, how did your parents display God in the household? You know what I'm saying? That's raising kids in the church, like in the way of God. So when we think about your story as a whole, right? How would you encourage somebody who may be dealing with a loss, or maybe struggling in a dark time, or may have lost a relative? How would you encourage them? I know you do that a lot with your job currently, but how would you encourage somebody who is dealing with a situation right now?
Hmm. I say the first thing is lean on your support. Like, lean on your support, like, system. Like, try as much as you can to talk about it, because a lot of times, in these situations, people like to isolate, and then once you isolate, you start to, drift off into your own thoughts, which is not always a bad thing, but it's also good to, talk about these things. So I'd say, like, lean on your support and time, and I know that's not, like, no one wants to hear that, but time really, like, you just gotta give yourself time. Like, if you wanna cry for 2 months, cry for 2 months. If you wanna, do certain things, do it, because at the end of the day, time is gonna be your best friend. And I think I say this all the time, and I wish somebody said this to me, is like, it doesn't get easier, you just get stronger. You just learn how to deal with the loss, right? And I really wish somebody told me that, because, a lot of times people are like, oh, it's going to get easier over time. Like, like, if anything, like, after time goes by, like, you miss the person more, because I'm like, all these memories, like, my mom wasn't at my graduation. She's not going to be at my wedding. You just get stronger, and you learn how to you deal with it in a better ways. And you appreciate the people who are in your life more, and you work on those relationships. But I'd say, give yourself time, and it's grief, and, like, dealing with grief is not, there's no time frame for it. So everybody looks different. So knowing what you need.
Yeah. One thing I'm learning in life right now is that God doesn't heal you for you. This sounds nuts, but God doesn't heal you for you. So Bible, it was times where Jesus would heal people, and he would say, hey, don't tell nobody. And they would still go tell people, right? And then those people would follow Jesus, or they would get saved because they heard this person's story. We hear this countless times with people that he's healing, or the woman at the well, or even Jonah's story where, it's different aspects of seeing God heal people, like through using other people to heal you. Like he's healing you, but other people are viewing it and getting healed as well, right? So he doesn't necessarily heal you for you, where he doesn't just want Olivia to be healed from whatever she's battling. She now wants Olivia to move and minister to another group of people. She wants Olivia's story to impact others and be able to heal them from whatever trauma they're dealing with. So thank you for sharing that. I think we're definitely going to be able to reach a lot of people.
That's what he says, like, go and make disciples.
Go and make disciples. Go and make disciples. And I think we have to be vulnerable. We have to have conversations like this that allow people to feel like it's a safe space to be discipled. With that being said, thank you so much for coming to us. This is going to be a great journey, and we're happy to start with you.
Yes, I was excited, and I really hope that my story will be able to relate to you in any way. Well, when I say you, I mean y'all, but whoever's watching. But yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one.